story, and I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Carol. And yeah, welcome everybody to this coffee and talk. And we'll try to keep it very casual. So this talk is about innovation partnership program project, which we have recently finished with the one industry partner, Kilkenny Group, and one academic partner. And so I'll just kind of share a bit of results with you and what next we are thinking about, and maybe get your thoughts on it. So this project was basically about two things. From the title, it also says, so designing new kind of experiences and analyzing the customer data and customer experiences. So if you see on the top left, we have physical store and cloud, like as in online. So we collected data from different sources. We analyze the data to get a 360 view of the customer. And on top of that, what we did was we improved the customer experience through product presentation with virtual store. And eventually all of that help the retailer to make good data supported decisions. So this was the main purpose of the project and the main vision. And as I said earlier, it involved MTU, Kilkenny Group, and Maynooth University. So how did we do the new experiences? So for that, we developed a virtual store. Actually, we had a virtual store 1.0 and then a virtual store 2.0, in which we had the learnings from the first one implemented into the next one. But this virtual store is kind of replicating the experience of a physical store, but you can use it from the comfort of your home. It provides very immersive experience if you have your VR goggles on, but you can also use it on your computer or your mobile. So basically trying to give sense of a physical store experience into the virtual world. So that was the purpose of it. And we did something which were done first time in Ireland. For example, there were some virtual stores in Ireland before this launch, but we were the first one which had shopping through this virtual store, so customers could shop and basically add to cart within the store and just complete the shopping. We added seamless additions from the inventory, so any change in the inventory on the website automatically transferred to this virtual store. And we then added a lot of videos and the storytelling with video as part of the experience. And then the second part was analyzing the experience. And for that, what we did was we evaluated the current analytics practices in the retail sector. And what we found was there was a huge difference between kind of the standard one and the premium ones. And that's the gap we wanted to fill. So the best or the biggest retailers in terms of revenue, they use a lot of different types of analytics, but the smaller and medium-sized retailer, they don't have access to it. So we wanted to bridge this gap working with a medium-sized retailer. And then for having the data in the physical store and online store, we developed some semantic mapping to have consistent data coming from both. Then we developed a DynamoDB database and did API integration to get the data from different sources. And eventually we developed a dashboard for visualization and to give the Kilkenny Group access to all the data from different sources in one place. So this was the kind of main project. And then what were the key takeaways? So in terms of designing the new experience, one thing which we really found that you have to involve the customer throughout the design process. And we know this from theory, but that was very important aspect of getting the design right for what customers needed. The second thing was integration with other channels. So in the case of virtual store, especially the integration with the website and how customers can move from the virtual store to the website, that was really a key in delivering a good virtual store. And then fit to the value proposition. So Kilkenny is an experiential retailer, and what they wanted to portray was different, for example, from a utilitarian retailer. So in designing these kind of new experiences fit to the value proposition is really important. And then in terms of analysis, one of the main thing was to make sure your partnerships are right. So interoperability with other technology providers was a key, because we were connecting to all the data sources through API. And if some technology providers don't provide APIs, or we can access them, basically we couldn't include that into our database. And also, again, in terms of designing, the involvement of retail experts throughout the design process to make sure that eventually we'll deliver what they actually need. So now this project is finished. It was very successful, but as in the digital retail cluster at IVI, we are thinking, what can we do next? And there are 3-4 areas in which we are thinking, and we have done some work on that. And that's where we'll want the contribution and ideas from your side as well, if you have. So first thing is we're looking into with what we call edge framework. So that's ethical data generation and exploitation. And at the moment, there is GDPR, but still there's a lot of issues especially with retailers in terms of handling sensitive customer data. And what we want to do is to even go one step further than GDPR and make sure that retailers use all the sensitive data of customers in an ethical way, and make sure that customers know how the data will be used and everything around that. Then the second thing which we are working on is assigning value to data. So that's another interesting thing which we came across when we're doing this project is retailers collect a lot of data, but how much data is worth, and that's something we want to find out. So this is just an example that, for example, a retailer knows the customer address, so how much is it worth to a retailer? So here, this is just an example of 50 euros, but it could be anything. And that is another project which we are thinking about, that could be an avenue which we can be explored further, and making sure that retailers know which data to collect, because how much it's worth. So sometimes you're spending more money to collect data for it's not worth that. The third thing is shared data spaces, and that's something when we were working with Kilkenny, and we also then engaged with other retailers. Like all the medium-sized retailers have limited capacity, limited resources. And one way in which they can compete with Amazons of this world is to kind of have these shared data spaces in which they pool the data and expertise across the retail ecosystem and help each other. And what we could do here is to kind of facilitate that and design the framework in which these shared data spaces can be actualized. But that is something very, very interesting, which at least I find very interesting. We're moving forward in IVI digital retail cluster. And the last thing is moving on from the virtual store. As we know, there's a lot of work being done in metaverse. So we also want to explore how would retail analytics look in metaverse, and what would be the difference from the normal physical store and an e-commerce or the virtual websites which already exist. So how would the analytics be different in metaverse? So these are some things which will want your opinion on, and if you want to kind of collaborate on any one of these areas, more than welcome. And yeah, this is the kind of it. And now I open it to discussion and to want to hear from your side.
Yeah, I might just start off there. Thanks, Rehan. That was really interesting to hear about the work that you're doing there. So I just have a quick question around the value of the data. Is it purely looking at it from an internal perspective to to the specific retailer here. So it's not, as you say, it's trying to figure out what is valuable to collect and what, I suppose, it means to maybe their bottom line or how it contributes to it. But is it purely an internal focus, or is it looking at the value of data as well? That can be, when you look at the shared data space, that can be shared with other businesses.
Yeah, so all both of these ideas are just kind of starting. So we haven't thought it through in like. So we started with this value of data thing, kind of maybe the value is different to each retailer. So because of type of retailer, for them, for example, a customer's birthday is more valuable, for another one it's not, and so on. So the value from what we think would be based on the characteristics and type of retailer, and it would be different for each. But as you said, then when we come to shared data spaces, it could be somehow, we could also have a shared and average value or something like that. If we are having similar kind of retailers, they would have similar value most likely for a particular type of data. But if there are different types of retailers, they might have different. And then the shared data spaces might be more interesting in terms of, like, for something is not worth to me, but it's worth more to another retailer, and I share it and I get a monetary benefit just because of sharing it to that other retailer. And that's why we want to kind of design this fair sharing system in which if a retailer is sharing data and it's worth something more to other retailer, they compensate that retailer for that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting area, and definitely I think one that's going to gain a lot of traction. You know, I get not all data is equal, and if you can put some sort of framework or method around valuing that, and in the retail sector first and others, I think it'd be really interesting to.
Yeah, like we got good traction from different retailers. The only kind of thing here is it's very technology focused, and retailers are not that tech savvy mostly. So it's the bridging that gap has always been difficult for us so far, with retailers telling them like how this can be done actually in terms of technology and so on. But the essence of this idea, they really like it, they appreciate it. So yeah, we have to make sure that we bridge this gap and get retailers and other partners on board and start this kind of a thing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rehan.
Thanks, Denise.
Thanks, Sarah. Continuing what somehow what Denise was saying about the shared data space and the value of the data. So I was attending a conference on digital health, and they were talking about a societal compact that is a kind of this new concept where some stakeholders agree to share data among themselves. So it's not open data, it's not closed data, but it's there are kind of formal and legal agreements to open data just to the stakeholders of this compact. It's an interesting concept, and somehow it could be also related to the value of data, because as a customer, I could, for example, decide to share some data more than the ones that I usually give to the store if I get something in return. But it's, let's say, explicitly say it's not just, okay, get some voucher or some discounts, but some specific value, so that if you can give a value to the data, and I can choose, for example, I give this and I will get exactly this amount of money or whatever is in discount or in well, I don't know in which way I get a return. I can decide that inside a specific group I will share, so that I'm sure that it's not going to everybody. My data, it will stay inside the group, inside the compact, as they call, and it will be, I will get an explicit reward or something explicit in change of my data. So is that are you think to connect the two, the value of data, a shared data space could be something of a direction where you want to go?
Yeah, like as you said, so there are kind of two strands to it. So one strand is the customer in terms of the end user wanting to share their data for some value. So that is very important, and that's one strand. The other strand is a company, a retail company, or any other company in the retail ecosystem, they wanting to share their data. So, like, do we value both in the same way, or we don't? Like, I really don't know at the moment, but these are the things which we want to kind of figure out in this, that, okay, like, how do you value a data for getting directly from a user, end user, like a customer in a retail, and how do you value data which is coming from another business into the shared data space? So both of these might be differently valued, might be valued in the same way. So that's the kind of research we need to do to really find out. But as you said, like we can kind of combine these two concepts, the value of data and shared data spaces, and that might be the way to go forward with it as one rather than two different projects.
Yeah. Actually, you're quite right, and it's interesting because exactly, it's not only the customers' data are useful for the company, but on the other hand, the company's data could be useful for the customer. I was thinking at the beginning when you were showing the virtual store, and maybe if you could compare how quick I find a product when I'm in a physical store compared with when I am on the virtual store, maybe as a customer, I would be interested to understand, okay, look, if you go to the virtual store to find a product on average, you will take less time than if you go to a physical store to that product. Okay, and this is something that you can analyze. Of course, you can get analyzing the data from the physical store and from the virtual store. So this kind of feedback is something that the customer can use from the company's data could be really useful. So that it's really a win-win. What do we say? A win-win strategy for sharing this data again among this specific group of stakeholders.
Yeah, definitely, and it doesn't even end there. And then there is company-to-company sharing as well. So there's the sharing between customer and company both ways, and then there's company-to-company sharing, and then it's in terms of we can also then move it into company-to-company sharing in one sector, getting company-to-company sharing in other sectors. So there's a lot of kind of nuances to it, and that's why like it's very interesting for me in this area of research, because it's not simple and it's not easy. So it's really worth researching.
Thanks.
Thanks, Marco.
Yeah. Okay. If there's no one online asking a question, might have a question, comment, or observation maybe on the beginning. So listening to the discussion now and the presentation, thanks, Lehan, for the presentation and insights into the project. I think it's an exciting, or it was an exciting project, and the way forward, I think, as you outlined it, are really interesting topics. Yesterday, I participated at a panel on the World Credit Summit, which was quite interesting. Very similar discussion on ethics, data value, AI possibilities on it, sharing data between customers, credit rating. So that's a whole area of actually credit rating, but also recovery of credits. And I was just thinking, basically, if you talk about data or value of data, that's a really nice scenario where we really can show directly data, maybe not just analyzing the past transaction data. We have actually far richer data with the interaction with customers, and we probably can contribute a lot on scoring, on on ranking of customers. So we know a lot about their behavior aspect. And I think because it's basically like in the market with very low margins generally in the retail sector, I think if we improve something on credit rating, on aspects on that, we have a really nice business case where we really can clarify this is the value. If you reduce the payment of a couple of days, like you improve your cash flows, and that really has clear revenue benefits or monetary value. So I think that might be a nice way of looking at it. A second aspect of that conference, so the panel was around open standards, open payment. So that linking between payment providers, data sharing between the banks and credit is actually a really nice way of looking at it, that actually transaction data, sharing of information on this is technically possible and needs to be really catered from a data governance perspective. So I think from that yesterday's conference, listening to you, listening to other sectors, agri sector, we have, I think, common problems on data governance. So we basically should really join the forces together into kind of discussing best practices, ways to do data governance, to really look at data value, ethics, and really shaping kind of how data governance actually looks like. So it's just I know I didn't have a really particular question, but I think this is an observation and fits very well into this. So yeah.
No, definitely. I completely agree that there's a lot of scope in this in terms of joining forces with other areas. So it's not a problem just for retail. It's an issue for other like banking, as you mentioned, and agriculture. So like I think the main thing is to be able to kind of connect these two things, which you said, customer behavior or behavior, and then on the other side, like this financial thing or putting a financial value to it, and then doing all of that ethically and in a fair way. And so all of these aspects are under data governance in one way or another. But I think in retail, especially, it's a very urgent kind of a need, I think, because if this keeps on going like that, and we have discussed this a lot of time, that then Amazon is already having so much data and they are going away with it. And if they keep doing it, like there will be no smaller retailer. So we will lose this kind of uniqueness of so many different types of shops and different types of experiences as a society which we get. So I think it's just not a retail problem, it's a societal problem as well, that if we keep letting these just 4 or 5 big companies having everything, that they know every customer and everybody, and the other retailers, they basically can't compete with it. So we really need to as a society, focus on this aspect, that the smaller retailers, this uniqueness in our town, in our cities should always be there. Any other questions, comments?
Maybe then I have another question with the time. I think we have still 2-3 minutes. So we talked about the benefit, and you mentioned the benefits from the research point, and I think it's fantastic with an innovation partnership supported by Enterprise Ireland to work with innovative companies and really bring it to the next line of innovation, in this case in retail. So, but now if I switch that to the company side, Rehan, you work now with the company for a while and in the IPP. What would you say are the main benefits, or how would we encourage companies actually to work with an innovation partnership with Enterprise Ireland? So what do they get out? They get a lot out, probably, hopefully, from the research, from the concepts and what we develop with them. But maybe you could just highlight and summarize that again for the company side.
Yeah, so there are two aspects to it. So first of all, when we start an innovation partnership, there is, of course, an innovation of which that company is a part of, and they get a lot in terms of the benefits when that innovation comes to fruition. And the second thing is, which I found very interesting when working with the company, is this day-to-day interaction with researchers, that helps the companies a lot as well, that they get, apart from the kind of innovation project which is already happening, this sharing with academics and getting new ideas from the latest research, and that helps company a lot in terms of defining their strategy, changing some of their operations. So we had this project for around 2.5 years, and I've seen that company grow in terms of their digital transformation maturity. How mature have they become? And I think those like us and the other and MTU, we had a big part to play in that, in terms of guiding them a bit where we could, and exposing them to other aspects which they were not considering. So these are the two main benefits which I think of as, firstly, this normal, not normal, but this innovation with the partnership and the project, and the other is just this kind of access to researchers who really know about the state of the art in that field.
Yeah. Maybe I can add two more aspects. I know these are really big benefits already for the company side. So it also helps to focus on a particular topic. So you mentioned 2.5 years working on a particular topic, having good researchers, exciting ideas, and can realize that. But also, I think one of the benefits, it's supported by Enterprise Ireland with the development advisor, but also financially. So it's co-funded from Enterprise Ireland. So I think it's a really good scheme to engage in research, working with universities, with the Innovation Value Institute together, and really focusing on a topic and making it also feasible from a budget point of view with the Enterprise Ireland support.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a lot of financial sense. Yeah, you're completely right. So I think we don't have much more time. So I'll quickly then want to share the upcoming events. So maybe Carol.
Yes, so thank you all. Thanks, Rehan, again. So just to share with you guys that are new, that have joined us today, just to share, you can join us on our LinkedIn, Twitter, and sign up to our newsletter to see of all the new and upcoming events we have. And just a reminder, as part of Research Week, from the 24th to 28th of October, we have, as you can see there, a number of topics that will be discussed during the week here in Maynooth University, and our webinar, our data governance webinar, will take place as a hybrid event, online and in person, and that is a Thursday the 27th. So yeah, please get in touch with any questions or anything anyone may have. Just drop us an email, as I said, or follow us on any of our social media channels. And thank you all for joining.
Perfect. Thank you. And if somebody wants to get in touch with me, that's the email, and I can answer, or we can get a discussion around the digital retail topics. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.